Welcome back, everyone. I'm Dr. Laura Jagged, and this is the How to Life podcast. Thank you for joining in again. Today's topic focuses on emotions, and more specifically, how to soothe yourself when in the midst of negative emotion. When most people think of emotions, it's often in a negative way. How many times have you heard of someone being too emotional, an emotional wreck? Burying their emotions, wearing their emotions on their sleeve, or being emotionless, meaning heartless. Emotions are often thought to work against us, but the opposite is actually true. Emotions are extremely important to us. They're a compass, an indicator of how close we are to being aligned with our true self. Our true self, the best version of ourself, is a happy, light-hearted, optimistic lover of life and lover of self. That's how we were born, and that's who we truly are at our core. But there are events, experiences, and conditioning that cause us to notice and feel the unwanted, feel pain, feel distress. It happens to most people, if not all people. And there are many justifications as to why we would ignore the emotions that are signaling us, or why we would act out because of them. But this misdirected and misguided way of dealing with emotion works against us in the long run. This interview today will focus on the fact that we all have emotions. They're there to inform us of where we are in relation to our optimal self, and therefore they're a good thing. And we're going to learn things you can do to acknowledge them and soothe yourself into a better feeling place. Only you can do that for you. No one else can. I have a great interview today with mental health therapist Tayla Hadley, who specializes in working with adolescents. When she heard about this podcast, she reached out to me and offered to share her knowledge about DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, which is a seemingly easy but highly effective technique for soothing and calming oneself. She is kind, passionate about her field, and just wonderful in general. Let's learn how to honor our emotions, manage them, and take control of our own happiness. Welcome, Tayla. I'm very happy you're joining us today.
Yes, I'm happy to be here as well. Thank you.
Emotions and what to do with them, what they mean, I think is a mystery for a lot of people. And you're going to bring a lot of clarity to this subject. So negative emotion is the thing we're going to mostly talk about it, what it is, what it means. So why don't you tell me about pain and distress and the effect it has on the body and the mind and the soul?
You got it. So it's interesting that you kind of came in saying negative emotion, right? So we all experience emotions and we can label them as negative or positive. And what Marsha Linehan, who's the creator of DBT, says that the best way is not to judge these emotions, that they are there to communicate information to us. So we all have had those times where something happens and we perceive it as a negative event and we can just spiral out of control. And that's where some of those impulsive behaviors come in. Like somebody did something that really hurt my feelings. So I felt all of this anger, right? Yes. And so anger is a really strong emotion, really powerful, lots of energy in that. And it can be driven to shift change. Or, it can be driven to get into that physical altercation. But what that emotion is essentially doing is communicating us that we have this really strong value and that situation wasn't in line with that value.
I see. So it's an indicator that we have somehow disassociated from our true self, our value.
Yes. Or that situation, wasn't safe. So I even think of the example of a 2-year-old child sitting in a street, right? And you see a car coming, you feel fear and panic, and that drives you to move. It drives a behavior, it drives you to go and get that 2-year-old child. And so we would never say, oh, fear is a bad thing, right? But sometimes it can be interpreted that, oh, I feel fearful of this. Well, it's emotions serve purpose. They communicate to other people and influence others. So let's think of sadness, right? Yeah. So my dog passed away. I feel really sad. Well, when I'm crying, that communicates information to other people to come and comfort me and soothe me and connect with me, and also influences others. So it communicates information and influences others. Emotions also organize and motivate action. So kind of like I was saying earlier, that action to go save the child. And then emotions can also, validate us. So when you're in experience and you're feeling that overwhelming sense of joy or love, that emotion is validating that where we're at is in connection with our soul.
I love that. When you do have a very positive emotion like love, and I love that you said it's connecting, it's a reflection of who you really are, what your values really are. Now you kind of have this gold standard of where you can be when you're at your best. So if you're below it, you can say, well, I know where I want to be, and take steps to get yourself back towards there.
Yes. Yeah. Just imagine an emotionless world, and and you see that when people are like really depressed,
Yes.
that's because they are kind of pushing down all of those emotions and not allowing them to feel them. Your body will depress all of that, and you'll get like a really flat affect. I don't know if you've ever tried to connect with somebody who is really experiencing depression, and it's simply, I've pushed all of these emotions down because I've gotten the message that, gosh, I'm just too emotional, or my emotions are bad, or my emotions are working against me. Dr. Jagged, we know everything within me is working for my best and highest purpose.
Agreed.
My emotions surely would never be working against me. They're always driving for something positive.
I completely agree with you. Yes. And if you can make that realization, then when you're in the midst of negative emotion, you've just gotten away from yourself. Your perception is altered, and you can take those steps. In the beginning of your opening paragraph, you talked about Marsha Linham. Is that correct?
Yes.
And DBT. Tell me what DBT stands for, and who is Marsha Linham?
Okay, so Marsha Linham is the creator of dialectical behavior therapy. It has become the gold standard for a lot of treatment centers. It's a beautiful therapy. It's very skill-based, so very tangible, breaking these concepts down. And so she talks about life being, painful.
Yeah,
Like
I mean, it
we
happens.
can't. It happens.
And it happens
life
to everybody.
Yes, yes. I don't think that we can go through life unscathed. Like life happens. And so these skills just really help us to navigate and manage those, more effectively. That's the thing, is we want you to be handling these situations gracefully and getting what you want out of it, right? Like, let's all help you get your end goal. So somebody really made me upset and I feel all this anger and rage. Well, my end goal is either to communicate with them like, hey, I don't really like it when you come into my bedroom and go through all my stuff, right? Can you please not do that? But if I come in outraging and yelling and name calling, surely this person, I just kind of lose all my credibility and they see me as irrational. Whereas the reality is, I have a very valid point. Like, this is my stuff. This is personal. And you just went through that. I don't think anybody would like that.
So the goal is to reduce these impulsive actions, recognize the emotion, and then get yourself to a better place so that you can then make a better choice on how you move forward.
Yes, yes. So I like to think of it as everybody gets to a 10, right? I don't think anybody's
a -10, you mean? Like,
yeah,
everyone has that
10.
a boiling point.
Yes, yes. And this helps you to, identify that and bring yourself back down.
I think it's important to know that distress or pain, it happens to everybody. And if it happens to you, you're not alone. So don't think you're the only one. And accept it. Because if you don't accept it, then you feel like a victim and it just causes more pain and suffering.
Yes, yes, you're right. It actually leads to increased pain and suffering.
I can see
So
that.
let me think of an example. My friend, I have this really close friend. Friendships are important. And I found out that she was talking with another friend and sharing some of my private information and even like saying negative comments about me.
Yes.
So I of course, am going to be hurt by that. I don't think any human would not be hurt by that. And so I go tell my mom and I say, gosh, mom, my really close friend who I trusted did this. And my mom says, you know what, Tayla, that's not really a big deal. Obviously, she's not that good of a friend, right? So in that moment, my mom has just invalidated me. And it actually creates more suffering because she says, just let that go, Tayla. And it's hard for me to let that go because that really hurt. It's communicating information to me. And so I actually just create more suffering because then I start judging myself like, yeah, Tayla, that shouldn't bother you so much. Why are you letting that bother you? So then I start questioning that instead of just kind of identifying that. And so you'll see that. You'll see a big thing in DBT is validation. And you and I can hopefully talk about that another time. But
Sure.
you'll see that of people having these big emotions and people saying, well, that shouldn't even bother you.
But in this example, I think it's also important to not judge your mom either because it didn't happen to her. So when you're removed from that and you're just
Yes.
watching it, you're like, well, that's not a big deal because it's not happening. If it happened to her, she may feel that. So just because she said
Yeah.
that was her attempt to try to soothe you from her
Yes.
point of
Yes.
reference, which
Yes.
she's not in your point of reference. So those words really can't help you at all. So these
Yes.
techniques to soothe yourself is your best shot at self-validating.
Yes, 100%. And so we get into a pattern of either invalidating ourselves or trying to seek soothing and comfort from others, and they can't. And so that's what we want is we want to help you to soothe yourself.
How did Dr. Lidham even come up with this therapy?
Well, so she had started going to therapy and wasn't getting much results. And so she created this on her own. And it wasn't until, gosh, I think the therapy was out for like 20 years and she was getting all of these accolades of, oh, how did you do this? You did such an amazing job. This is so effective. It wasn't until all of this positive reinforcement came that she came out and said, I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, which can be a pretty heavy diagnosis. And some
There's a
people
lot of
will
stigma attached to that.
Yes. It's almost like any mental health diagnosis, Dr. Jagged. They create this label and then you become, gosh, I'm this. And what I want to say is you're never that. A diagnosis always is just a framework that people kind of communicate amongst each other. Like this person has a broken arm. Yeah. Well, yeah, surely they have a broken arm. They are not a broken arm.
That is absolutely right. And the broken arm heals.
Yes, yes. Borderline personality disorder up until DBT came out felt like a really untreatable diagnosis because it's a personality disorder. And what we're learning is adolescents and teens, your emotional regulation. And so when I say emotional regulation, I think of like that line, like that graph, and you see the high spikes and the lows, right?
Yeah, I'm going to post this graph on the show notes on the website afterwards so people can reference what you're talking about. Continue.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
And so you really high highs and really low lows. And there's a podcast that I listened to, and they were talking about teens experience more joy than we will ever access. Like me and you, we could look at this sunset or have this engaging activity and we're like, oh yeah, this is great. That's probably like a 6 or 7. Because of all of the hormones and the development that's going on with adolescent in the brain, they actually have access to higher highs just naturally. Mm-hmm. And so what I think happens is it's just easier for them to get dysregulated because all of that is free flowing around. There's more access to that. You have teenagers. Have you ever looked at them and you're like, oh my gosh, they're having so much fun doing the silliest thing. How are they really having that much fun? And good for them. And so it's so awesome for them that they can have those highs. And I just think that sometimes they're prone to more dysregulation. Their peaks and valleys are just a little bit higher and lower. Right. And as you grow older, you just kind of regulate naturally. And I think these skills can really help teenagers, when that flood of chemicals happens to regulate.
Good. Let's talk about these functions of DBT. What do they focus on?
Yes. There's 4 components of a DBT. And what you and I are going to focus on is distress tolerance, just like what it sounds like, tolerating distress. And so in that, there's, again, this is what I love so much about DBT. There's so many pieces and chunks. And so we're going to focus just on one of those chunks, which is a self-soothing technique. And so the best thing that I like about this too is it's stuff that we already use. It's not like I'm telling you that you have to go out and buy a dog and go do all of these things, go get these vitamins, go meet this. Like, this is stuff that's really accessible and stuff that people already do. It's just being mindful of applying that.
Understood. Let's talk about them.
Okay. So when you think of self-soothing, what I would like you to do is think about comforting yourself, nurturing, and being kind. And so one of the easiest ways to think of that is using each of your 5 senses and soothing those. Okay. So let's just kind of jump in with vision. So vision would be some examples: walking in a pretty part of town, looking at nature around you, buying a flower and putting it where you can see it, watching the wind outside blow through the trees, lighting a candle, watching the flame, looking through your iPhone, right? You have pictures all the time. So just looking through your iPhone of some really beautiful pictures, opening a book that had beautiful scenery too, because sometimes maybe the pictures in your iPhone might have some pictures that might create negative emotions. So actually, like, having a special place of where there's, maybe like a photo album, right, that you put together, or something like that, or watching one of your favorite movies or videos.
I would like to also suggest that turning off the news or anything that is going to broadcast negativity might make you feel it. Turn that off so you're not looking at it.
Yes. This is very intentional. So I'm going to soothe myself. Gosh, I'm just really upset. Oh, what could I do? I could do something where I'm just really connecting with looking at something really pretty.
Distracting the eye. And now let's take hearing.
So hearing, I think teens naturally do this, or young adults, listening to music, right? And so if I'm at a 10 and I'm like really upset, I know that sometimes the idea is to connect with music that reinforces that emotion, right? Because then you feel validated and
the sad love songs.
You.
Yes.
Yes. Oh gosh, yes, completely. And what I'm saying is, yes, I get how that could be soothing, but it's even better when you do the opposite and soothe yourself with like some really upbeat music that you like, or some just beautiful calming music.
Yeah.
Tapes of the ocean or other sounds of nature. And then even just being mindful of the sounds around us. Like, if you sit quietly enough, sounds come and go all of the time.
Smell's the next one. Let's talk about
easiest
smell.
ones.
Okay.
Yes. So smelling breakfast while being cooked at home. Notice the different smells around you. Maybe just after rain, going outside and connecting. I know we live in Las Vegas.
My favorite smell.
Yes. And think of like how soothing is that? So these senses really have the ability to, how amazing it is that our body was just built with this ability to naturally do that. I always keep some oils around.
Essential oils. I love them too.
Yes. So you could throw some essential oils in a diffuser. You can even just put some on your wrists and smell. And that can really just soothe yourself and even shift your mood dramatically. Some people that really love baking, right? So they're just naturally like, I love baking. And they don't even really understand, but they're soothing themselves through that, through the smells of baking or even cooking. I mean, go cook your favorite meal. I had this client and we were talking about soothing smells, and she said, I love the smell of boiling chicken.
Well, perhaps it brings up like a memory of her grandmother or something. And
yes, exactly. And that was specific for her and it soothed her. And so she was able to tap into that and know that, okay, I've had a really tough time. I'm going to go home and make some chicken soup, or I have to boil the chicken. And so it's almost like knowing your superhuman powers. And then once you can shift into those, gosh, you have so much more ability to manage your emotions.
Let's go into taste.
Yes. So taste, having a special treat, eating it slowly, cooking a favorite meal, One of my favorite is drinking a soothing drink, like a herbal tea or hot chocolate. So that's like a easy plug in. I know some people too, when you're like emotionally feeling hot, grandmothers used to just tell their, kids, oh, just go get a drink of water. And they were really in tap with something. Yeah, go get a drink of ice water. And so these are things that we naturally do. And our grandmas were like, oh gosh, grandma, like drinking a cup of water is really going to make me feel better. But
Right.
there's value behind that.
And lastly, touch.
Yes, touch. So taking a bubble bath, if you have a dog or cat, petting them and just really being mindful of the senses while you're petting them. Put on a silk shirt or blouse, feel its softness, sink into a comfortable bed, float or swim in a pool.
Mm-hmm.
I think of throw pillows on couches, right? I just went and bought some new throw pillows for my couch, and they're so much fun. I love just kind of rubbing my hand over them. And that sense of touch just really grounds me.
So these are all things that we do every day, but the point of this technique is to do them purposefully with the intention of reducing the distress and getting to a more neutral or even positive mood.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And what's cool is, you can kind of build your own, I would suggest all of my clients go through and just kind of create a list, right? So write vision and then fill in a couple things and then go through each sense and kind of creating your list of things that you know. And then you kind of have that survival kit with you. So it's hard to, when you're at an emotional 10, think of things that you enjoy because you're just like so mad. And so, I have all of my clients go through and create that list, and it's something that they can just reference throughout. And then you'll see people start to throw things in their purse. Oh, I'm going to throw this really wonderful citrus scented lotion in my purse. And then they're in a situation and they can just grab that lotion, put it out, and really soothe themselves with that. So once you just start kind of building your little toolkit and looking around, you'll realize, oh, at work, at office, I have these couple things. I had a client who loved elephants. And naturally, she just had kind of collected these elephants around her desk. And we talked about that. And I said, well, when your boss really upsets you and or you're feeling upset, right? Because her boss could never upset her, right?
Right.
She's experiencing feelings of being upset. So when that happens, you have all these elephants. Just take a minute and look around and look at the elephants and enjoy them. And she came back the next week and was like, oh my gosh, it's that easy.
She wasn't aware. And many people aren't aware that this something so simple, something as easy as this could really help turn things around. When you do become aware that there are tools to do this, already you've planted a seed in your mind that you can control this strong emotion and then circumvent it in the future.
Yeah, it's like practice, I don't think somebody goes like, oh, I'm really mad and I'm so angry and I'm just going to go smell my lavender and I'll be okay. Like it doesn't happen overnight, right?
It's practice. Practice is key.
Yes, exactly. I think some people discredit these things because they sound so simple. And yeah, they really are simple, but it takes practice and applying that and that intention. Don't knock it the first time you try to soothe yourself. I think that it's new and everybody's experimenting with different ways to really comfort and nurture ourselves. I love our culture, but I think sometimes we miss that self-nurturing, that self-love. I think that self-care has kind of become the big talk right now. And what does that really mean? And sometimes people will say, oh yeah, bubble baths and manicures and pedicures. And self-care and self-love is that really simple thing of, yeah, I'm gonna put on my nice PJs before I go to bed.
Yeah. And I think there's a tendency to think, oh, well, somebody else has to do it for me. But nobody can do it for you because no one knows what you need. And honestly, if you can find a way to self-soothe on a regular basis, that is so empowering. You really have control over your life now, and you never feel like you're a victim of somebody's cruel words or insensitive actions.
Yeah, because we know when they do that, we feel an emotion, which again is communicating, gosh, maybe I shouldn't spend time around this person.
Right?
Right?
You can make choices.
This person isn't very good for my soul. And so then
Absolutely.
it drives a behavior to disconnect and connect in a more like healthy, beautiful way. Like our emotions really are working for us. And I think, yeah, going back full circle to what we first started about, once we realize that our emotions are our friends, and we start soothing them and caring for them and nurturing them, they're the biggest communicator ever.
I agree. Now, I think that probably a lot of men think that to have emotions or express them or feel them is weak or they're
Mm-hmm.
illogical. What
Mm-hmm.
would you say to that?
Oh man, you just opened up a whole nother
Another podcast. Well,
yeah,
let's just give a
yeah,
summary then. You are
yeah,
not
I know.
weak for crying or feeling distress. It's not a sign
Yeah.
that you're a weak person. It's not a sign that you're an illogical person.
No, when I think that, so women get this kind of, you see women connecting and their relationships just look different because they communicate emotions and are more vulnerable in that way of communicating emotions. And I think culturally, we have raised, men to be strong and not feel emotions because yeah, stereotypically emotion can sometimes get in the way, right? So
Mhm.
sometimes if I really feel something and I'm stuck in that, it's hard to get what I was supposed to get done, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so I think men are trained, you have a job to do, you got to get it done. Those pesky emotions get in the way, or other emotions. Yeah, they can make a man appear weak or different things like that. And
Only in their own mind.
yes, yes, and that's and I think that culturally those messages have been transferred, and they're not working out well for us. We see a generation, and those aren't truths. Those are just a belief system that are old and outdated
Yeah.
because we know that emotions drive like intense, meaningful connections, and so that's when you see guys with good friendships or
Mhm.
guys that are effective bosses or guys that have relationships like
Yeah.
those wouldn't be possible without emotions. And so I don't think that you can have connection without emotion.
And I think that if you are a person who tends to bury your emotions because
Hmm.
you think they're negative, you don't have to tell anybody you're self-soothing. You can do these techniques on your own. It should be on your own anyway.
Hmm.
You don't have to tell anyone about it. And as you learn how to recognize the emotion, recognize what
Hmm.
techniques that work for you to get yourself to a better place, a better feeling place, then you're just going to
Yeah.
look like, wow, this person has it together all the time.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. So kind of going off what you were saying, I think that sometimes you'll see this disparity of anger management for men, and I think culturally there's been this permission of, okay, you can express emotion in the form of anger, right? Well, in reality, we know that anger is not a primary emotion. It's actually a secondary emotion. So primarily they were hurt, right? But as a man to say, gosh, that really hurt me, it's harder to say that. So they can just be angry about it. But it's hard to fix something from anger. It's hard to come at it um,
Exactly.
and really manage that effectively and really get the results you want. Whereas if I was able to say, gosh, that really felt disrespectful and that hurt me, then I can just see it clearly. And gosh, I'm really functioning from a much empowered position. So
Yes,
emotions actually empower you.
they absolutely do. And it's a good indicator that when you are below neutral on the lower ranking emotional scale, don't make decisions, don't make rash actions from there. Have you ever written a letter in anger and then never sent it? And then when you're
Mhm.
feeling better, you read it and you're like, oh my gosh, thank goodness I didn't send this.
Oh, I know that texts and all of that stuff that
Hmm.
that text that I just shouldn't have said. So you're
Correct.
right, and that's what I love about these skills is they really help you to regulate before you do those impulsive behaviors.
That's wonderful. I want to just point out one thing that wasn't on the five senses list. I want to add a sixth sense, and I call it mind soothing. It's my own personal tool that works very well for me. I do like smell and I do like
Hmm.
taste, but for me, mind soothing is relaxing my mind and looking at whatever is causing my negative emotion in a more positive way. So I did a podcast on the benefits of keeping a gratitude list. I also do a technique where I will write a list of positive aspects about whatever negative situation happened that is triggering me. There's always something good somewhere. So I will write it down. I don't even mention what I don't like because that's obvious. And even if there's one or two or three things on there, I'm going to look at that. I'm going to focus on that. Just look at that. And pretty soon I start forgetting. It just starts petering away the ugly part of it. And I feel better. The situation happened. It's happened. Yep. Can't change that, but I can change how I look at it.
Yes. I love that. I think that that's kind of the cherry on top.
Wonderful. So how can somebody find a mental health professional or a coach to help get through these emotional states to be a better, well-rounded person?
Yeah, I'm so happy you asked about that. That's a really common question of where do I find a therapist? The first thing I always recommend is if you have the benefit of having health insurance, calling your health insurance and seeing what your mental health benefits are. I've seen some benefits, Dr. Jaggett, as wonderful as a $5 copay. I've seen some as high as a $50 copay. And so just knowing what your benefits are is the first start, and then knowing what therapists take that insurance. So your insurance has to provide you with a list of therapists that take your insurance. So that's the first thing I would recommend. And then the second one would be checking out Psychology Today. So Psychology Today, I like to joke that it's the online dating profile for therapists, but it really is a wonderful resource. It's kind of scary thinking about reaching out to a stranger to talk about some of your biggest problems. And so in psychologytoday.com, it has like a zip code finder. You put in your zip code and it will pop up all of these profiles of therapists around you. And then you can even put in like a search disqualifier and put in your insurance. And so
it filters it down to your preferences.
Yes. And so I always recommend that. And a lot of therapists nowadays, are getting with the 20th century and 21st century. So on the profile, you'll have a link to, their websites. And so you can check out their website and see, who really looks like they would be a good fit and help you navigate.
And now what if you don't have insurance? What can be done?
I would look for a cash pay therapist. There's a lot of therapists that are just building their private practice, and they will do what's called a sliding scale. If you see that on there, that means that they're willing to accept, what you're able to afford as a cash pay client. I think seeking help, depending on what issues are going on, is always the best. But there is a lot of resources, YouTube, and things like that. So you could YouTube DBT skills, even if you just listened to this and said, gosh, this really resonated with me. We are so fortunate in the time that we're living. There's so many wonderful resources out there
that we have access to. I absolutely agree. When I was graduating school, chiropractic school, right before we graduate, we did clinic and we accepted patients from the public. Is there something like that for mental health professionals?
Yes. So UNLV has a clinic called The Practice. So that would be a great resource as well.
Okay. And UNLV we're broadcasting out of Las Vegas. So that's our university here in Las Vegas. So there may be other universities that have a clinic for cash paying patients to go as well. That's another resource.
Yes.
This was a really good, I think, very valuable podcast.
Yeah, I love getting this information out and would love to continue any conversation with DBT skills. They're a passion of mine. I feel like so many people can use them. I know me personally as a growth as like a parent and an adult, I've used these and benefited from them.
Yeah,
and so
I do too. Before we go, can you just sort of give a summary of the points that we just talked about?
Yeah, of course. I think the biggest takeaway from this is that everybody feels emotions, right? And that emotions are important, they have value, and that we don't have to judge them as negative or bad, that they do serve a purpose, and that we can really just be more effective when we can soothe those emotions. And so the easiest way, look at your palm of your hand, think of 5 senses, and just kind of going through those. And I find that they're best when combined. So if I use sight and hearing at the same time, gosh, I'm just hitting two different parts of my brain. The emotion is really going to go from a 10, right? Like, I'm at a boiling point, to something more manageable, to where you can just be effective. And we already do these naturally. So it's just kind of being more intentional with that.
Tayla Hadley, you were a wealth of knowledge. Thank you very, very much. I think I'm going to have you back on again. We'll talk about some other things.
I would love it. These skills, I learned them later in my practice. So I think I went through my grad program, and it's funny. I was self-soothing without even knowing it in grad school, exhausted. I would stop and get a coffee and a chocolate chip cookie before I went to class. And that was kind of like my little treat. And looking back, I'm like, wow, I was really soothing myself. It's that adding that intentionality. And so here I was after my grad program, and I was practicing for 3 years. And then I got introduced to DBT and started using these skills more intentionally. And so here I am, right? I'm a professional. I went to school to do therapy. And so I say that to let people know, gosh, everybody is here just learning what works best for them. And going back to what you said, I would love to share more of these skills because I just love them so much. They've helped me personally.
Well, we will definitely do that again. Thank you so much for today.
You're welcome.
It was a pleasure.
Take care.
You too. Emotions are there to serve us and guide us. If you feel like you're at their mercy, you really are not, and you don't have to be. The techniques that Tayla just shared can help you stay more in control and more balanced, help you get back in the saddle if you get thrown off. We all get thrown off, so don't think that you're alone. It just takes practice, just like everything does, so keep at it. The key is to set the intention to feel better and then deliberately set out to do so. You can do it. It's so empowering when you can take steps to improve an emotion rather than let it control your actions. Emotions are your guidance system. They're there to help you. Listen to them. If you like this podcast, I would like to suggest a couple of others that you may enjoy that follow along the same mindset. Episode 2, The Benefits of Keeping a Gratitude List, and Episode 4, What to Do When You Don't Know What to Do, also offer some tips and techniques that you can do to soothe yourself and improve your perception, which all lead to feeling better in any given situation. If you're still here, please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast. Please give it 5 stars and leave a nice review if you're so inclined. And please share this with anyone you think it may resonate with. I thank you greatly for that. Also check out the Mominars on my YouTube channel, How to Life. It's an abridged version of how to do basic life skills. Consider subscribing there as well. The show notes for this episode can be found at howtolife.com/008. Have a great week, everyone. Intend to be happy. Decide to be easy about everything. You got this.